So imperative is a juicy form of the verb, as we done in the last chapter. The difference between this and what we've done before is, number one, how the this fi'l amr or imperative will be constructed is slightly different. And number two is that this is in reference to the second person. So when you talk in the second person and you ask them to do something, for example, if you ask to write, you will use this, right? And if you ask them to stand, you will use this. So you're only using for second person. So whether it's a male, female, whether it's two people, one person, or three people, or 10 people, you will use this form. And the way it works is, in terms of what we've done so far, with the verbs we've done so far, the way it works is, the first thing that happens is as indicated. Yeah, will be so for example, if you look at the fourth line where it says yaktu, because it's not seem to be working. So from there, so we take the imperfect verb, and the first thing that happens is the prefix, which is ya here, it drops. Okay, so why is it not doing this? So it becomes only the word so the verb becomes kaf, ta, and ba. However, if you look at when the ya drops, then if you look at the kaf has a sukoon. So we can't have ka, ta, and ba with the first letter starting with the sukoon, because you can't pronounce that. So to overcome this, we add a alif at the start. So okay, it's working now. So if you look at this, for example, yaktu. So this is fi'l amr. So this is imperative. So the first thing is ya drops. So when ya drops, it is yaktu. So the kaf has sukoon, and the last letter has sukoon as well. It's not going to be, because it's yusiv, right? We mentioned yusiv is when the last letter has sukoon. Or what was the second thing, Sudais? Can you explain the rule for yusiv? What we discussed last lesson? What happens to the verb?
So you're talking about the negation. You're talking about now.
No, yusiv. Just what happens?
Hamza is added.
No. What we learned last lesson. So when you say,
we have to add a prefix to it, like article in front of it, like if you're talking about negation, then you have to put a la or ma or lam or lamma.
okay.
Like that. And min and fi, already that's we mentioned, like genitive forms, you have to add it to, then it becomes the genitive itself.
Okay, there's lots of.
Is also there.
Are you using headphones, because you seem very far away and there's lots of wind?
Yeah. An we can also use an, kad.
No. You're not answering my question. Did you memorize the last lesson? Did you go through the revision?
No, I just did the exercise. I didn't get the time to do it again. I will do it.
Okay, because that's fine. Because you're not answering the question. What I want to hear really is okay. There's some particles we talked about, lam and la, and the key was when said juicy. We on about the verb. What happens to the verb? So we said when the verb doesn't have additional.
That becomes it gets a sukoon, And if it has a noon in the end, then we have to drop the noon.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the same here. The only difference between imperative and what we did last lesson is the fact that imperative doesn't require a particle in front of it. So that's what happens. But obviously, in last lesson, yaktub would still be yaktubu will become yaktub. The ya wouldn't drop normally, or the prefix before it won't drop. But in terms of these verbs, sorry, in terms of imperative, the prefix drops. So it becomes like this. So last letter will have a sukun anyway, because Jusif, that's what we mean by Jusif, with majzoom. Oh, right, with majzoom, we mean it will have sukun at the end, or the noon will drop, number one. Number two is we have a problem here. So to solve this problem, what we do is we put alif at the front, because we need something to join onto kaf, because kaf has a sukun, because we just dropped the prefix. Then, okay, alif, what vowel do we put on alif then? Because alif needs to be vowel to join to the kaf. So the rule is that if the middle letter, so the middle, once a middle letter, middle particle or middle root letter, which is, there's three root letters here. Kaf is the first one, ta is the second one, and ba is the third one. Okay, and to determine which vowel the alif should have, we look at the middle letter. So if we look at the second particle, so we look at ta here, it has a dhamma, so the alif will carry dhamma. It becomes uktub. It means you write. So you could say this was taktub if you want to. So it becomes uktub, write. So you're telling the person in front of you, uktub, write, singular. Okay. And one thing I wanted to point out, yes. So that's one thing. And the rule states that if the middle letter has a dhamma, it will take a dhamma. Otherwise, it will take the alif will take a kasra. If, for example, even if the middle letter has a fatha, the alif will take a kasra. So, for example, yamna'u, or for example, tamna'u. Okay, first, if you look at it, it becomes tamna, right? And then you can see, because we want to make it imperative, it becomes like that. This has a sukun, so we need to put alif. So which haraka will alif take?
Kasra, sir.
Kasra, yes. So simple rule is look at the middle letter. If it has dhamma, add dhamma. Otherwise, take add kasra. Okay. And then, so that's the rule. So this is very essential. So we need to memorize this, inshallah. And then that's why it's telling you here. So everything I'm telling you here is it's all in here. So for example, it says yadrib, it becomes idrib. Mana'a, it becomes imna. I mentioned this already. So imna'hu, prevent him. You're commanding somebody to prevent him. Okay. So also it's mentioning, why did we add alif in the first place? We said we added alif because the first letter of the verb became sakin.
Was.
Yes, and so it needed something before that to pronounce it. So for this reason, it's like similar to Hamzatul Wasl, like what we done before. What's the rule of Hamzatul Wasl? We pronounce it when at the start of the sentence. But if it comes the middle of the sentence, we don't pronounce it. We just join the letter before it directly onto the next letter. For example, here, izhab lil babi. It's not wa iftahu. We don't need to say iftahu. We just say waftahu because we have fatha on the waw You could turn directly onto fa. Waftahu. But note that we still write alif, but we don't pronounce iftah. We just say waftahu. Does that make sense? So here we said ijlis because it was yajlis. Okay, it was yajlis and became ijlis. Sit down. Waktub. So it was originally uktub. Sorry, it was yaktub. Yeah, it was became uktub because the prefix dropped and then became uktub. But because it's middle of because there's a word before it, we just join the word before it wow on directly onto kaf. Waktub. Ijlis waktub. Sit down and write. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so then he gives example. Another one. Summa qala al-waziru hadha al-qawla. Then the minister made this statement: write a long letter to brother. Uktub maktuban tawilan lil akhi. So here nothing joins. We say uktub. We don't say laktub because all of this is like in speech marks. So it's like a new sentence. That's why. Okay, so then he goes through the conjunction. So we could just write it quickly here for uktub. So for singular it will be uktub, right? Singular masculine uktub, you write. What would it be for dual masculine? Uktuba, because normally it will be taktubani. The prefix drops, becomes uktuba, the noon drops as well. And for plural, it will be uktubu. 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 And this is referring to 3 or more people. So because it was taktubuna, the noon drops, and the prefix drops, and we add alif uktubu. And this is for masculine. So this is singular, dual, and plural. For feminine, it'll be what would it be?
Uktubi.
Uktubi, yeah. Uktubi. Rahana, are you doing surf somewhere else as well?
Yes, sir.
Are you doing surf these verbs somewhere else as well?
No, sir. I was
Okay.
trying to write on my own. You're dropping the note.
Oh, okay, mashallah. So uktuba is the dual. Same with the masculine. Uktuba. So this is singular for feminine. This is dual. And for plural, the noon doesn't drop. So we mentioned before the feminine plural noon doesn't drop in any of the cases. So it's uktubna. It was taktubna, it becomes uktubna. The noon doesn't drop. So this is what we called before. The feminine noon doesn't drop. And the way I look at it sometimes is when all the ladies get together, it's very hard to break them. So this, inshallah, memorize. I will test you guys next lesson. But I think you guys understood it. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. And also, so this is commanding somebody to do the action. However, if you wanna, like we've done last lesson, prohibition, tell them not to do the action. Then we mentioned that we just add la at the start, and the prefix remains, so it just becomes la taktub, do not write. La taktuba, do not write. La taktubu, do not write, plural, for example. Also, we covered ya in the previous lesson, and we mentioned that when you add ya, the next letter word becomes definite. Like it doesn't take alif lam, can't take alif lam because of ya. But it becomes definite. So ya rajulu, oh man, because you're referring to a specific person. You're not just saying a man, you're saying oh man. So you're talking to somebody. So it's similar here. So that was a rule, and we said it's not ya rajulun, it's ya rajulu. Okay, so this is what we learned last lesson. So ya is the particle which makes the noun definite. And now he's expanding on the rule what we learned last lesson. That's why it's important to be able to revise and learn what we did last lesson. And he's mentioning here is that when we have an idafa, so when the next noun is not just singular noun, but it's part of idafa, then the next noun doesn't just take one dhamma, it takes a fatha. It becomes accusative, right? For example, if you say Abdullah, the servant of Allah, so it's a name is Abdullah, right? Because it's idafa, because originally the name what you meant was slave of Allah, Abdullah. The Abd, it becomes accusative. Ya Abdullahi. Or here it was Ya Abu Bakrin. So mentioned when Abu Aba Abi, when it's part of idafa, we say Abu Aba Abi. Okay. And originally it was Abu Bakrin, radiyallahu anhu, Abu Bakr, name of a Sahabi. When it's added ya to it, it becomes Aba Bakrin. Why? Because it's part of idafa construction, and when ya is put before idafa construction, it becomes the first noun becomes accusative. Or ya Abdul Hamid. And he mentions here that this is just not with the names, it's also with ordinary idafa. So here ya katib al mahkamati, the clerk of the court. It's not ya katibu, it's ya katiba. Because of katib is mudaf and there's ya before it, becomes accusative. Does that make sense? Okay, when ya
Yes, sir.
yes, when the ya is next to the noun directly, the noun can't take alif lam. However, we have another particle which is similar to saying ya, which is ayyuha or ayyatuha for masculine and ayyatuha for feminine. And this is used when the noun has a definite article. Okay, so ya, when there's no definite article, there's no alif lam. When it's alif lam, we use ayyuha for masculine or ayyatuha for feminine. So here, example, ayyuhal talamizu, O scholar. Or we can say ya talamizu without alif lam. But if you want alif lam, we say ayyuhal talamizu or ayyuhatul bintu. So also it says it may be preceded by ya. So you could say ya ayyuhal waziru. Why it does still takes alif lam? Because it's next to ayyuha, not ya. There's a ya, there's a word between it, so the rule doesn't, ya rule does apply. Ayyuhal rule applies, or minister. And he says that with ayyuha, the noun must be nominative. Then we talk about the active particle. So active particle describes the action, but it's also sometimes what we call the person who's doing the action. For example, the way we do it, to form it for similar for simple verbs. So we simple triliteral verbs, because when you in the next lesson, I think, or the lesson after, we will learn other verbs which are not simple verbs. Rule will be slightly different, but if the verb is simple triliteral verb, which means you have three root letters and nothing else, then it becomes on the scale of fa'ilun. Fa'ilun in Arabic means the doer, right? So this scale, we have daraba yadribu, so we could have daribun. It means the hitter, or talibun. Talaba yatlu means demand or seek. Talibun means demander or seeker. Like We use yes for student because student seeks knowledge, right? But also this form fa'ilun also describes the verbal force. Like for example, talaba yatlubu means demand, talibun means demanding, the action of demanding. Katibun, kataba yaktubu means to write, katibun means writing, or it means writer. We've already done this, right? So active participle used for two reasons: either to describe the verb, like demanding, writing, or to describe the person who's doing the action. So, for example, here mentions katibun is the one who writes, so we call him clerk. Or talibun is the one who demands or seek, so it become to mean student, because originally it was talibu ilmin, the seeker of knowledge, or seeker of knowledge. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay, so
No,
when you
sir.
do, okay, you when do the exercise, inshallah, you would need to go back and make sure you understand. That's fine. Farisun, riding, a horseman or a knight. So I mentioned here that the active participle may take various broken plural. So katibun, clerk, katabatun is broken plural. Katibun, writer. Kuttabun is broken plural. Talibun, talabatun, or tullabu, broken plural. Farisun, fawarisu. So basically, you could the active participle singular is fixed. Fa'ilun, but its broken plural is not fixed. So here it says that the above plurals, we shouldn't use them. We should use the sign plurals when the verb or when the participle has a verbal force. Hum katibu hadhihi al-makatibi. They are the writers of these letters, because it's like describing a verbal force. So they are the writers of these letters. So if you say they are the clerks of these letters, they are clerks, you say hum katabatun, right? But here you're using as a verbal force, so you use it as hum katibu hadhihi al-makatibi. Or you say ana katibun maktuban, I am writing a letter. So basically here, this katibun, we said it can mean two things. So here, for example, we said it can mean the person who's doing the action, or describing of the verb. For example, writing, eating, sleeping. So it's a verb within that, basically. So it's like saying ana aktubu maktuban, I am writing a letter, right? It has verbal force. So here, that's why the next word, it becomes like an object and becomes accusative. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
So we have to see the context to see whether it's describing action or whether it is describing the doer. So
Yes.
it will be according to the context.
Yes, context and practice, basically. Okay. When used with the kana, the active participle gives the meaning of the past, so just the past, or future continuous. We done future continuous before. For example, it was stuff like and as such may replace imperative.
Sa'a or sofa. Yeah. Sa'aktub or sofa.
Okay, past or future continuous. He was going out of his house. Okay, so basically it's mentioning here he will be staying with me. He was. So you know when we mentioned previously, so basically if kana is used with active participles of for the form fa'ilun, so it can mean the past, or it can mean, you shouldn't say future continuous, it's a past continuous. So past continuous, we said, were things like we're talking about the past, but when we're talking about the past, in the time of the talking, the action was continuing. So for example, kana kharijan. Kharijun means out. So if you say kana kharijan, it could mean he was out. He was out, or it can mean he was going out. When you say he was going out, we're talking about the past, he was, but we're talking he was going out. So in the past, when you saw him, he was doing the action. So it's called past continuous. Or so if you use the imperfect, يكون خارجا, I believe it means he will be out, or he he will be out. For example, here if you say kana yakhruju min baytihi, so we've done this before. This is provision. So we said when kana is used with the imperfect of a verb, it means past perfect, past continuous or past habitual. So this would be translated, he was going out of min baytihi, his house. So another way of saying it, we say is kana kharijan min baytihi, he was going out of his house. When you use kana with the active participle, like we mentioned before, this is kharijan here is being used as a verbal force. Kana means it contains he was, kharijan going out. He was going out. Does it make sense? Or it could be he went out. Kana kharijan, he was kharijan, going out, because it's a verbal force, min baytihi. Or here yakunu yanzilu indi, he will be staying. Yanzilu can mean staying. So you could say he will be staying with me. Yakunu yanzilu indi, or you could say yakunu nazilan indi. So yakunu would mean he will be, nazilan is staying, he will be staying indi with me. Does that make sense? Okay. So as we mentioned before, sometimes the active participle, which is on the scale of fa'ilun, may be used verbally with a verbal force. In that case, it can take a direct object. We've seen one example of that. And the object becomes accusative, as we've done before. So for example, huwa rakibun hisanan, he is riding a horse. So he was saying huwa yarkibu hisanan. So here is describing the action. Rakibun is on scale of fa'ilun, and he is showing the verbal force. He is riding a horse. Kana, he was rakiban hisanan. He was riding a horse. So here, rakiban is the object of kana. He was, because of he was riding. And hisanan becomes accusative as well, because it's another direct object. Because rakiban here is used with verbal force.
Sir,
Yes.
Rakibun, the base form was Rakiba, to ride, right?
Yes. No, right.
Yeah, riding.
Yeah.
So when we make it present tense, it should have been Yarkibu.
Yes.
Okay. But when we use this Failun form,
Yeah.
there's no need to putting that prefix of present tense.
No, because because this,
Rakibun itself means riding.
yes, riding or the rider.
Okay.
Okay, and it depends. I mentioned is on the context and how we want to use it. So here we're using his verbal force. So here the rakiban means essentially yarkibu. It's been used.